I went from being paper thin my whole life to building this dream physique in just a few years. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it in half the time it took me. Throughout this video, I'm going to go through the specific aesthetic muscle groups that you should be spending your time on and how you should train them. I'm also going to talk about comparisons of how to build an aesthetic physique and comparing this to bodybuilders, where people go wrong who get too much into bodybuilding, and how exactly you can align your physique so that you can create the most aesthetic physique possible. So to start off with, I want to outline the most important muscle groups for building an aesthetic physique. So the first one, which is arguably the most important, is your upper chest. After that is also your lateral deltoids, so specifically the side deltoid muscle. In addition to that, there's the neck muscle, which is quite important, which so few people actually train. So if you can actually start implementing this into your routine, this is going to really make your physique stand out. After that, we've also got abdominal muscles, and then we've also got legs as well. Lastly, we also have the back muscles, specifically the lateral muscles. So to start this off, I want to do a comparison between an aesthetic physique and the physique of a bodybuilder. So if you look at bodybuilders, a lot of them actually spend so much time getting into the intricate details of building up each and every muscle evenly. So they actually spend a ton of time training. They train specific muscles like your anterior deltoid. They train every single little muscle in your upper back and your lower back, which aren't really noticeable to too many people. However, a lot of people who get into bodybuilding and actually compete, they're actually judged on every single individual muscle. And a lot of these things just don't actually really translate too well into aesthetics. So if you think about building an aesthetic physique, it's actually, the crux of it is just actually people wanting to look nice. Essentially, you just want to look as best as possible. You want to have the muscle groups that stand out, and you want to have those, you want to really develop those to the best extent that you can, so that these muscles kind of really stand out and you actually just look really good. And in addition to this, it's just helpful to have a physique that looks really nice. And in addition to, as opposed to a physique which you've just built just specifically to build muscle, specifically to compete for the judge's scorecard. It's a lot different, and in my opinion, it's a lot better if you have a physique which just you've focused in on specific muscles a lot more. It may be a little bit disproportionate, but overall, it actually looks quite a lot nicer and it appeals to a lot of people a lot more. So the first muscle group that I want to get into is the upper chest. So why the upper chest is the most important muscle group for aesthetics is essentially because this is the muscle group that people are just going to notice. When you walk into a room, even if you've got a t-shirt on, a lot of times if your upper chest is built up, you can actually kind of see this outline through the top of your t-shirt, especially if people have a white shirt on. But when the shirt is tight around the upper chest, it's really obvious. You can really kind of see that, and it just sticks out. In addition to that, if you look at photos that people use online specifically for their physique, maybe it's a gym shot, maybe it's a shot by the pool, it's just the first thing that people look at, and it's the most noticeable thing. If you don't have a prominent upper chest that really sticks out and is really aesthetic, then people are just going to notice, and it's going to really kind of offset what your physique kind of looks like. It's going to be quite detrimental to the actual appearance of your physique. So this is probably the most important muscle. It's the most aesthetic muscle. It's the muscle that people look at most often when they look at your physique, and therefore it's just a muscle group that you do not want to have lagging. So I've put this one at the top of the list in terms of the most important muscles you can work on. And the way that I generally work on my upper chest is just incline bench press. This is a really effective routine because it takes away the stability that you have with a lot of dumbbells, and it's just a really good effective way to build up strength and to build up muscle with your upper chest. Some other exercises you can do cable rows, incline cable rows, and you could also just do incline chest flies. But really any incline movement is going to help build your upper chest. Now there's a lot of people, some people you've seen like Justin Waller online, who talk about only specifically training their upper chest and not actually training their middle chest or their lower chest. And if you have a look at some of the people who don't train their upper chest and they only train sort of their lower chest and they don't specifically target their upper chest, you can see that their physique actually looks quite strange. It doesn't look too proportionate, it doesn't look ideal or as nice as it could be, and it actually is, it's actually quite detrimental to the overall appearance of the physique. So this is something which you could actually try, and I would recommend implementing. If you want to train specifically for aesthetics, why don't you just train your upper chest muscle? So instead of doing flat bench press and an incline bench press and doing 3 sets on each one, you could just do 6 sets on an incline bench press when you go into the gym. This is something which I've started implementing as well recently, and I've just found that this doesn't have any kind of negative impact on your chest. You've still got the lower chest, you can still see it, it's still pronounced, but if you just emphasize all of your effort on the upper chest, this is just really going to help you build up that aesthetic muscle, and it's going to really help benefit your physique. So the next muscle group which I want to talk about is the deltoids, and specifically the muscle group that you want to be training for aesthetics is the lateral deltoid. So the reason why you want to train this muscle is because you want to be creating that golden ratio and that V taper from your waist that goes up to your shoulders. So it should be looking like that, it should be more of like a V shape. And the way that you get that V shape from having a thin waist to wide shoulders is just from, you can do exercises to thin your waist like vacuuming, but one of the most prominent ways is to just train your lateral deltoids. So the way that I do this is I just normally spam lateral raises. It's a very basic exercise, easy to use, limited equipment, anyone can really do it. But if you just spam lateral raises and you do 3 to 4 sets of 20 reps each time you hit chest or each time you do a push day in the gym, this is just really going to help build up these muscles. They don't need too many sets and reps to actually tear the muscle group because the lateral deltoid is such a small muscle. However, that also means that you can train them a lot more often than some other muscle groups because they're so small and they tear easily. They also recover and rebuild a lot quicker as well. So you can therefore increase the time under tension by just spamming lateral raises 2-3 times a week. I found that doing this doesn't really overtrain this muscle, and you can really just train them as much as you like, and just the more the better with this specific muscle group. Now it's important to note that doesn't translate to some other muscle groups like your chest or your back, which are a lot larger and create more and need more time to actually recover. However, specifically if you're talking about your lateral deltoids, you can just spam these kind of almost every day. I just do 2 or 3 times a week, but it's really important to get these muscles built up. This is going to help, just like I said, it's going to create that V taper. It's going to make your physique look really nice, and it's just going to help with that overall aesthetic look. Now the next muscle group that I want to speak about is just the back muscles, and specifically the lateral muscles. So this muscle is a muscle which you should not neglect, even though a lot of people do neglect it, just because specifically for photos, a lot of people only take front-on photos and you can't really see the back as much. However, you have seen people who look super aesthetic, who you can actually really see their back muscles coming in from the side and they'll kind of look like wings. This is a hugely beneficial muscle group for your physique. This is going to really help and make it a lot more aesthetic. If you have built up these back muscles, and when you're actually looking at someone front on, if you can actually kind of see the outline of their back muscles coming through from frontal view, that's actually massive. This is something which is really going to help build up. Again, it's going to build up that V taper. The back muscle is quite essential to build up that V-tape shape. And in addition to this, it's just going to make your physique look so much nicer, and it's just going to kind of build it up and make it look more well-rounded. And it's just another muscle group which is really important and really helpful to train as well. I found that probably the most important exercise you can do for your back is just doing pull-ups. If you can't do pull-ups right now, you can start with a band, or you can start on some of the machines they have where they add weight to it, so it's easy to pull yourself up. But if you're at a stage where you can do a few pull-ups on your own, I recommend that you should do this at the start of each back day that you have, whether it's a pull day or specifically a back day. I think it's really important that you put this in at the start. And the reason for that is because just the pulling up motion actually really builds out the width of your back. So if you're looking to do rows, that's going to really create the thickness of your back and increase that, which is also important. However, if you want to improve the width of your back, it's just going to be like a pull down movement or a pull up movement. So therefore, doing pull ups at the start of your back day is super beneficial. It's going to help create that width, and it's going to help your back starting to look like the kind of like wings coming through your sides as well. And that's also going to really help portray the aesthetic physique look. One of the final muscle groups I want to talk about, which are neglected by quite a few people but are so important, is your leg muscles. And the reason for this is because it just looks super weird if you've got a large upper body and your legs aren't actually built up and they're not actually proportionate to some of the larger upper muscles like your chest and your back. I've seen quite a few people who have built up their upper physique and they neglect these muscles, and this is something which is just like you're just kind of really, it just kind of doesn't look that great. It looks pretty weird. Some people I've seen who don't train their leg muscles as well, it just looks a little bit weird, it looks a little bit strange, and it just doesn't look as nice and as aesthetic as it could be. So just the most effective way to train legs is just doing heavy squats. The reason for this is because this is going to build up almost every muscle in your legs. Specifically, it's going to build up your glutes and your quads, which are some of the most important muscles in terms of aesthetics to build up as well. But it's also going to help with your hamstrings, and it's also going to help build up your calves a little bit as well. But it's important to actually implement leg day into your routine. You should be doing this at least once a week, but you should be actually doing it 2 times a week. And like I said, if you're not doing this and you're not actually training your legs, then it's just going to lead to you looking a little bit strange. You kind of look top heavy a little bit, and it just doesn't really appeal to that overall aesthetic look. If you want to have a full guide on my workout routine and exactly the training programs which I used to build up my legs really quickly and to really effectively as well in a short span of time, all of this is included in my paid program, which is on pre-sale now, which I've linked down in the description. The next muscle group to speak about is just your abdominal muscles. So you can see quite a few people who are actually bodybuilders that have built their physique up quite well. People like The Rock and some other celebrities. However, even though they've got all the muscles, they've got wide shoulders, they've got these like large kind of round shoulders that look like boulders, and they've built up the rest of their physique really well. They're super muscular. If you don't have those ab muscles, it just doesn't look anywhere near as nice as someone who, say for example, has a lot less muscle, however, has less fat as well, and you can kind of see their ab muscles in their physique photo. I just feel like having really good abs doesn't make or break your physique as much as having a large upper chest does, but being able to actually have abs in your physique just make it look so much nicer. It's so much more impressive because people know the level of discipline which is required to actually build up your abs. So if you're someone who takes the extra 5 to 10 minutes at the end of your training sessions and really works in some of your ab exercises, this is really going to make a huge difference. This is what really makes your physique really stand out among other people. I saw somewhere that there was actually a study showing that it's more rare to be a man over the age of 30 with a visible six-pack than it is to be a billionaire. This is how essential it is to really build up your abs if you want to have a really aesthetic physique which stands out. If you can do this, you're already going to be in the top 0.1% of physiques on the planet. The last muscle group which I want to talk about, which is kind of like a little known muscle group, it's not really spoken about at all, is just the neck muscles. So having a skinny neck, even though you would think that it's not really something that people notice, and it's effectively it isn't something that people would consciously notice. However, subconsciously, if you do actually have a really thin neck, it is something which people are going to notice, and unfortunately, it's something which people are therefore going to pay you less respect for because of that. Even though, you're not meant to and whatnot, it's just kind of human nature to do so. So if you can build up like a thick, strong neck, It looks really masculine. It looks like you have a ton of testosterone, and it just really kind of like builds out the rest of your physique. If you've got strong muscles, like you say you've got like a strong upper chest and you've got wide shoulders, you've got a strong back muscles, but then your neck is quite skinny. Again, even though it's not really something which people consciously notice, if you do have like a really wide neck and you've started to work out your neck muscles a lot, then this is just going to really add to your appearance overall. People are going to subconsciously start noticing that it looks like you're actually a lot more masculine. You've really like built up your masculine frame. And this is another muscle group which is essentially, it might be the least important on this list. However, if you can, it's important to just do a couple of neck exercises. You can just search them up, find some online. Some of them are quite basic, and you can just do them with a dumbbell or just with some weights at the gym. And this is something which is going to have a pretty high return on investment. I want to talk about how often you should be training, because there's a lot of debate which people talk about where they say that the bro split is the best training routine, where you just work each muscle group once a week and you go into the gym 5 days a week. So for example, one day might be arms, one day might be shoulders, and then the next day might be back, then chest, and then legs after that. And then another workout routine which I've seen people do is they've started doing like a full body routine, which is something I've never really tried, and then other people just do an upper and then lower body routine as well. Now I've found that while you can build muscle group doing all of these, they're not necessarily bad routines. However, science has proven that if you can hit the muscle groups twice per week, it's just going to have a quicker, faster, more effective gain on your muscle growth. And this is what's really going to lead to you building that aesthetic physique quite a lot faster. So because of that, this is why I included a push-pull legs routine into my workout routine. And I found that this is really effective because, for example, if you're training your chest and you're doing a bench press, it's not just going to change your chest, it's also going to train your muscles and your shoulders, and it's also going to train your triceps as well. So you just get more bang for your buck, you get a higher ROI per exercise. You can add in a lot of compounding exercises into your routine where you're hitting different muscles at once. And I just found that this creates a more effective routine because you can do this twice a week now, and you don't have to dedicate a specific day to each muscle group because you're hitting multiple muscle groups in each day. And then after 72 hours resting, when you go back into the gym, your muscles are going to be fully repaired, they're going to grow back thicker and stronger, and you're going to be ready to tear them again. So therefore, there's not really too much benefit in waiting a full week until you're going to retrain the muscle group again, because there's just a few days there, maybe 3 or 4 days at the end of the week, where your muscles had fully recovered and they were ready to go. And you just kind of left them out. You're just kind of leaving gains on the table if you do that. It's fine if it's not too urgent to build muscle quickly. However, if you do want to do this efficiently and effectively, I've tried different kinds of workout routines, and I've really found that the most effective routine to build muscle really fast is just doing a push-pull legs workout routine. The final topic which I want to talk about is your diet, and actually how you should be going about bulking and putting on muscle growth during this whole process. So if you think about what a lot of fitness influencers are talking about today, they kind of go through a process where you bulk up and you just eat tons of calories. A lot of times it's unhealthy. They promote eating a ton of ice cream, going to McDonald's. You've seen a few videos where it'll say like 10,000 calories a day challenge and things like this. And then after that, the idea is that once you've bulked on this muscle, you're going to put on a ton of fat, but you're also going to put on a ton of muscle as well. And then after this, you can kind of like slim down, trim off the fat, and then you're going to look aesthetic. Now, this is something which I never actually implemented across my journey, largely just because I think it's kind of stupid. So if you think about, I want you to think about actually the health impact that this is going to have on you if you actually keep going through this process over and over, like once or twice a year, like some of these influencers do. If you have a ton of periods where you're just eating really unhealthy and you're just trying to put on as much weight as possible, it's just going to mean that you're just going to be ending up spending a lot of time going to fast food restaurants. You're not actually going to be paying attention to a lot of the important macronutrients in a lot of the food that you have. And what's going to happen is it's just going to really start to deteriorate your health overall. And I don't really see any point in building up a really strong, effective physique if the whole way through you're just doing it to just tear down your health. Because half the point and half the reason why you should be going to the gym, it shouldn't just be to look nice and to be aesthetic, although that is a huge part of it. But another huge part of it is it should just really boost how you feel each day. It's exercising releases endorphins, it boosts your testosterone, it boosts your dopamine, and it boosts your serotonin. It also lowers your stress levels. So if you're spending all this time in the gym, it should just be so that you're actually helping to improve yourself overall. It should improve how you feel day to day, your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, your physical and mental health and well-being. So this is why I really disagree with a lot of these fitness influencers who go around saying that, you should bulk up, you should just eat as many calories as possible, and then eventually you're just going to trim down the fat and then look aesthetic. It's largely just because, like I said, long term, doing something like this, it's going to hugely have a detrimental effect on your health. And in addition to that, I also found that when I actually just go ahead and just start lean bulking, when I start eating clean and I just eat more calories, add in an extra meal a day, I actually put on muscle really quickly as well. And then I don't have to go through the whole process where I'm not actually increasing my weight at all. And I have to slow down and stop and then just kind of like stay at the same weight for ages and then just try and lose fat at the same time. I've found that if you're actually lean bulking, you're actually eating clean and you're eating single ingredient meals like red meat, steak, eggs, chicken, vegetables, things like this, and nothing else in your diet, you can bulk up and you can put on muscle, and you're just going to keep going up in the same trajectory because you don't have to have that process where you stop and you just maintain and you just lose fat and it just kind of drags on. And I found that it's actually kind of stupid because you can actually build muscle quite a lot faster just by putting in the correct diet and just adding in an extra meal every day. For example, this could be adding in liquid calories, adding in a smoothie every day in addition to what you were already eating, and just having that extra meal a day to just add a little bit more protein and a little bit more carbs to your diet, which is just going to help build up your physique a lot more. But you can do this without having to go through that whole process where you completely tarnish your health and well-being just for the sake of putting on a little bit more muscle. You can actually do it quicker, you can put on muscle easier, and then you can do this much more effectively if you just lean bulk and eat healthy, and then just continue lean bulking and improving and increasing the weights and increasing how much food you eat. I want to actually mention, if you think about all of the modern day diseases and things like cardiovascular diseases, things like arthritis, Parkinson's, a lot of these come from your diet, which is something which people don't actually realize. If you think back to our ancestors, what do you think our ancestors were eating day to day? And why do you think that they never got any of these sicknesses or diseases that we have in the modern day? It's largely because what they were eating were actually healthy, organic meals throughout the day. And if you look at how a lot of people used to look before kind of like the modern day diets came in, there was no one who was fat. There was hardly anyone would be fat. The rates of obesity have really skyrocketed in recent years. And in addition to that, people just weren't getting sick as much. A lot of these diseases have just become more and more common and more prevalent in the last few years. And a lot of it just comes down to like the diet that you choose to go with. Because what you eat completely affects how you feel, who you are, and how your body functions. So I want you to take that on board when considering your diet and how you should go about this. Like I said, I highly recommend going away from the conventional bulking and then cutting down and just continually lean bulk. Make sure you're still eating healthy foods, getting the proper macronutrients to feel good and also look good at the same time. But you're doing this at a trajectory that's just going to keep going up and up.